right, great. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to attend the Rutgers-Newark Small Business Development Center's webinar on websites, social media, and analytics. Never a time has this been more crucial for us as we are currently going through this pandemic. The way we do business has been deeply impacted. You know, websites are becoming a necessity now. Well, they were before, but the need for them is greater now as in-person and face-to-face interaction has been greatly limited. And social media has gotten very popular in the last few months as we all have been quarantined. It's become our friends. It's become our lifeline for connecting and ultimately a source for us as business owners to find customers, find new customers, nurture existing customers, and share whether it is our products and services or, you know, something inspirational or motivational to keep our base, our customer base engaged and help them as we try to make it through the current crisis. My name is Priscilla Liebert Calder, so I will be assisting in the facilitation of today's webinar. The presenter, Cecilia Henderson. I'll be introducing her in just a little bit. Just some housekeeping things before we get started. We're expecting, you know, roughly about 30-something of people today. Hopefully everyone shows up. But for the benefit of everyone on today's call, I would like for you to mute yourselves. If at any time you have a question, you can feel free to use the chat box, or depending on how busy or how full the webinar is, we may allow you, we do give you the control right now to mute or unmute yourself. And you may ask questions. We find that the session is a lot more interactive when we're allowed to ask our questions ourselves, but if it becomes too distracting, please understand if I end up having to mute everyone, and then you can just ask the questions via the chat box. At some point also during today's webinar, I will put a poll up. It consists of 3 questions, just asking you about your website and social media status at this time. It kind of helps us get an idea of where our audience is at any given time in terms of websites and their social media needs. This webinar is an overview for our full day workshop that's coming up. I think it's on the 20th of this month. Yes, it's on a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 20th of this month. It's on a Wednesday, right here on our Zoom platform. It will go a lot more in depth with what we discussed today, and it will be presented by 2 of our presenters, both Cecilia, who again you'll be introduced in just a bit, and Dan Stoll, who is the Director of Marketing at the Rutgers Business School. He will be handling the analytics part of the workshop. Unfortunately for today, we won't be talking too much about analytics, although maybe Cecilia might just cover it briefly as it relates to maybe your website and social media, but understanding how to dive deep in it is covered in the all-day workshop. For those of you who are not familiar with the SBDC, we are a resource center, and the objective of our organization is to provide one-on-one business counseling to individuals who are trying to become entrepreneur, aspiring to be entrepreneurs, or if you're a current small business facing issues, we provide you with consultants with expertise in various areas, whether it's startup assistance, whether it's marketing, whether it's international trade, import, export, if you need help with government contracting, attaining certification, if you need help simply with building a website or evaluating what platforms are best for you at this time. A lot of us need to start pivoting right now and looking at different ways. So if you need help with assessing your current business where you are at and finding ways in which you can help adapt your business to the current environment, which most of us know won't change at any time soon. We have consultants with expertise in these areas who are willing to do one-on-one counseling with you. The counseling is done by county, and our center is in charge of Essex County. So if your business resides in Essex County or you live in Essex County, you will simply go to our website at www.rnsbdc.com, which stands for Rutgers-Newark Small Business Development Center.com. And in the top right-hand corner, you will click on the Request Counseling button and just fill that form out. We usually respond to you within 24 to 48 hours. And the counsel would set up an appointment with you and do an hour consultation or needs assessment, and will give you recommendations that you would need to follow through before you can come back for more advice or more mentoring. If you're outside of Essex County, don't worry, there is a SBDC office for you. We have 12 centers right across New Jersey. So there's a center for every county. We simply will just refer your request to the appropriate county and they will reach out to you to schedule your one-on-one. The training, we also provide training, workshops, webinars, and those are offered by all SBDC centers. It doesn't matter what county you live in, you're welcome to attend these workshops and webinars such as you're doing today. So thank you for joining us. Again, I did say that the full day webinar is May 20th. And we understand that a lot of us have been impacted by COVID and finances might not be there fully. So we have officially made all our webinars free. So for those who paid, I know there's some of you who probably might have initially paid for today's webinar, which was about just $7. We are refunding you. So moving forward, none of our webinars will be charged, and all of our workshops are now offered at 50% off. So please visit our website at www.rnsbdc.com and click on the website and head over to Eventbrite. I think Eventbrite may have the most recent updates on the pricing. We're still updating the prices on our website, but Eventbrite, where you will make your purchases, do have the current pricings reflected, and feel free to register and we'll send you the information to access it. Everything is being done online, so you can just stay home in the comfort of your home. If you happen to miss a session or some of a session, we will email out a replay of the webinars, of the workshops. So not to take up too much more of your time, I will turn this session over to Cecilia. Are you with us, Cecilia?
I was talking to myself again. I'm here. Thanks. I had muted because I was moving around and you were talking, and I thought that rustling, we never know how much the rustling in the background is being picked up by the microphone. But thank you so much. Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here today to talk to the group about this topic, and really it's a bit of a teaser, as Priscilla said, for the upcoming more in-depth session. I'm going to go over some, higher level concepts and talk about how they relate. We'll get into further depth in the full day class. However, I would say in no way does a full day class, prepare you to do absolutely everything. But I think the objective here is to become really intelligent consumers of these platforms and websites in general as it pertains to trying to drive growth for your business. And, as was stated, this COVID-19 is essentially, um, what should we call it? Really just enhancing the drive that was already there towards online business, online presence being very important, and online conversations that need to be had. So I think you're getting a whole bunch of people who, a couple of months ago did not know where the on button was on their laptop or their computer, and now they're on social media and they may be working from home and Zooming, or they're using FaceTime. So the technology barriers are coming down very quickly. So I just want to see if I can get the slide to move. That would be a good thing. One second. There we go. So what we're going to talk about today is why a website is important for small business. And I think, by virtue of the fact that you're there, that you're here, you kind of understand this, but we just want to reinforce that, why and what it can do for you, why social media is important. Again, you probably think that it's important too. I think the objective here is, how do we leverage both of these things to help our businesses grow? And in order to do that, they have to fit together. So social media fits in with your other marketing activities. Your website is a core component of telling your message. And then we'll talk at a high level, at least, about some key social media platforms. And then we'll talk about next steps, which would be if you decide that you want to take the class. So I'll move forward, and all of the Zoom things are interacting with my thing. Okay. Nope. All right. So why am I talking about this? I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I own a business. I'm based in Wayne, New Jersey. My business is a WSI Marketing Edge, which is a digital marketing agency. And my marketing background is coming from working for a lot of large companies, managing all parts of the marketing mix, and working at all levels within those companies. So, I feel that one of the reasons why I went into digital marketing was because of the strong ability to metric what you're doing, which is why there is a section on analytics in the full day class. But as a business owner, I've worked with a variety of industries, many of them very small, startup type industries. And I have both B2B, which is business to business, and B2C, which is business directly to consumer type of experience. So we're going to get into the website, and what about it? This is the website section. And why do I have a picture of a phone? I have a picture of a phone because, at least up until recently, mobile was really driving what was going on online. So if you had a website and it wasn't viewable on your phone, and still this is the case today, if it's not viewable, and not just viewable, if you cannot do everything on your website that you would that on your phone that you could expect to do on a laptop or on a computer, then your website is not mobile ready. So I just wanted to really bring that up in the front. There have been some recent changes or slowdowns, and that's because many people are at home. As people started staying home because of COVID-19, what Google has noticed is that phone usage to do general searches on the internet actually has not grown as fast. But in many instances, phone is the primary tool that people use to do their searches. Even though it's the smallest screen in the house, I don't know why, but phone is really important. Of course, if you're out and around, if you're out, you're driving, you're en route from one place to another, that's what's driving phone usage. So what happened was, as people stayed home, we're seeing people do it less, but I still think we have to incorporate this into our plans at all times. So when you're thinking about a website, and I'm not going to get very deep here, I'm not going to talk about platforms and whether one thing is better than the other in general right here. Everybody has their favorites, but we need to talk about, when we're building a website, why we're building it. And so for that, you have some key considerations, like who your audience is, what their expectations are, and what your competitors are doing. And sometimes what your competitors are doing will drive their expectations, because if they've been to another provider who is like you, and you're missing some of the bells and whistles, that could be a problem. So those are things that you need to keep in your mind when you're planning out, well, how am I going to attack this problem called a website? Or given the website that I have, how am I going to modify it? So we think that websites are very important. They can help to build your business. And one of the reasons is because a website actually communicates your business's story in the way that you want it done. It is the one thing that you have control over and cannot have the formatting changed or different features disappear, like sometimes social media can do. So it is a static tool that can communicate your story in the way that you want it done. It describes you and your services, and it's the way that you can help to highlight your differentiation. How are you different from all the other people out there who do exactly what you do? It can help educate your clients. And for some of us, we have clients that need to have a certain level of education to really be able to consume our services. So for example, the blog page or pages that describe your services in greater depth. It enables people to make appointments with you. You could have a widget added to your page that allows them to make an appointment so that magically you have appointments. It's just another way. If somebody comes to your site, why would you have them go someplace else if they're ready to do that? It enables e-commerce. So if you have an e-commerce site or you have a few products that you're selling and you have a purchase page, why not make that available to them? This is about removing barriers to having the sale or making the appointment. And of course, it's the one thing that can sell while you're sleeping. So your website tells your story and you don't actually have to be there. And of course, you can link that to your social media sites and link from your social media sites to it. When it comes to websites, I work with a lot of people who are kind of in the early stages and they have a lot of hurdles. The most common ones are, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? What do I put on this website? What do I not put on this website? And I will tell you that, these are really important things to be clear on, because you might have been to websites where it looks like a committee organized and put it together. And it's got lots of different points of views showing up on one page, and that's a problem. Bottom line is your website doesn't have to be complex. In fact, the simpler, the better. And you can clarify what you need to say, what to include and what to exclude by thinking about your customer and their point of view. What do they need to know? And that will help you to prioritize your information. Now, you may be in a situation where you don't exactly know that, and that's where you may have to do a little informal market research by asking people. But for many of us, what we can do is put ourselves in the customer's shoes and say, I'm going to buy this service. What is it that I need to know? There are other things that I might like to know about, or they're nice to have, but there are certain must-haves. So that's what we have to deal with. So it's important to really get very clear on what you want to do with this. Now, when it comes to a website, one of the myths of a website is that I've got 5 pages. I expect everybody to read 5 pages on my website. But the reality is that doesn't happen. So what I think before we move on is I want to make sure that you understand, I'm not talking about analytics, but you may hear about this when we have the analytics section. There are things that you need to think about when it comes to your website, because these are the measures. They can be measures of success. So how much traffic, how many site visits, those are key metrics that you would be tracking as a part of your website. And most website packages have some level of analytics package associated with them, or you can have Google Analytics installed, and it will tell you this information. How many pages do people actually look at each time they come to your site? What's the bounce rate? The bounce rate is somebody coming to your site and potentially realizing that they've made a mistake and leaving, or realizing that you don't have what they thought and leaving. And it's usually that, it's only a few seconds or a fraction of a second. There's something called a click-through rate. So if somebody has a link to their website, what percentage of the time are they clicking through to the website? And in the website itself, if you have a link to something deeper in your website, you could metric that as well. What percentage of the time do they actually go to the contact us page? And then there's something called conversions. Conversions would be a successful outcome. If you have an e-commerce site, a conversion is actually defined as a purchase. But before that purchase, there are many mini conversions. Let's say that you land on the home page, but you have to navigate to a separate page in order to buy something, which is probably a mistake, but sometimes that happens. Moving to that next page, which is indicating that they're willing to buy something more, is going to be considered a conversion. So I'm going to ask if we can all mute ourselves because I'm hearing a lovely little puppy in the background. And I say that knowing full well, quite frankly, that the one that's living with me is probably going to start screaming and hollering in a minute. So, and I'll try not to scream at it. So anyway, the point being that there are different kinds of conversions. So for a website with a service, let's say you're a lawyer or you're an attorney and you want them to contact you or you want them to schedule an appointment, those acts would be considered conversions. So there are certain expectations that we have. Again, you know, some people think, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to, you know, people are going to see all 20 pages of my website. But in actuality, what we know is a good visit time for a website page is 2 to 3 minutes. On average, that's an average. So some visits are seconds and others are days. So the way what I mean by that is that there are some people who maybe like me, I'll visit a website and I just never navigate away from it and I just walk away. That could be a long visit if a metric is there. But the other way that you get a long visit is if you're doing an e-learning website where somebody has to take a course on your website. That is a longer visit than if somebody is just checking to see what your office hours are. So you can accomplish what you need to do in seconds, and you don't always realize that. And people do. They accomplish what they need in a quick period of time. But I think when you're thinking about your website and your content, you need to consider the attention span of the average person and to think about what else is competing for it. So realistically, people look at 2 or 3 pages per session. When I say a session is, I just decide I'm going to go look at this website. I looked at it, I've left. That's a session, okay? They're not going to read through your website from start to finish unless they're highly, highly motivated and there's some good reason for it. So sometimes your pages have to stand alone, and you have to understand and think about as you're putting your pages together and your navigation together, which is basically your outline, what are the different ways that people might logically want to flow through my website? So you may have 2 or 3 different kinds of clients or customers. Different kinds of customers are interested in different kinds of things. You arrive at a home page, and for client A, client type A, they may have pages 2 and 4 that they're most interested in. For client type B, they may have pages 3 and 6. So you want to make it easy for people to navigate directly to where they might most logically want to go once they've consumed the information. So navigation is very critical. You need to clearly delineate where they need to go for what. And in some instances, when you have multiple audiences, you almost have to have multiple front doors. I call it a front door. You come to the website, choose the door on the right. If you're looking for shoes, choose the door on the left if you're looking for socks, if you get what I mean. So in other words, you want to make sure that people can kind of self-identify and do what they need to do. Other instances, maybe that's not so important, but the point being that you want people to be able to clearly identify and get to where they want to go. Because if it takes work, that's friction, and that friction is going to read as difficulty, and therefore they give up because maybe the need is not that great. So, as I said, and this is about conversion. So we were talking about conversion, which is an act that you want them to take, an action that you want them to take. Again, e-commerce, buy something for me. In my business, I might want them to pick up the phone and call me, or I might want them to make an appointment with me. So I need to think about what my customer's journey is in the process. And that, again, drives what my navigation menu looks like. and I have to think about how hard things are to find. In one instance, I was working with a group who had a nice navigation menu, but once you get further down in the page, they need to very easily navigate to the next logical step. And the thought of having somebody scroll back up to the top of the page so they can go to the next section is, that's again, some friction that you don't want to have. So that's why you're thinking about your customer's journey in the process. So the other thing when we talk about conversions and just website practices is how much information. So remember, we were talking about the challenge and the hurdle of, well, what information do I provide and what information do I exclude? Bottom line is you want to tell them just enough information for them to do what they need to do, not too much because it's overwhelming. So you need to decide again, what's the most important thing? If it's overwhelming and you come to a very text dense type of page, depending on what you're offering, if you're selling to a highly sophisticated audience of scientists, having 5 paragraphs on a page is not going to be a problem. But if you are trying to get somebody to set up a hair appointment, you don't need that. So this is where you have to think about what your audience is, what they're accustomed to, and again, minimize any kind of friction for that particular audience. So we don't want to make any task difficult, and think about how things might be made easier. So if you are building a website because you are having a nonprofit, how you want them to be able to donate on every page of your website. You want them to be able to click join now on every page. You shouldn't just reserve that for, that one page, for example. So that's why I'm saying, think about what makes it easier. And then as you're moving through this process, always keep in mind what your strategy is and what your core messages are, and make sure that those messages are properly represented. But again, just enough information, not too much. Keep it simple. So just segueing into, so you have a website, you've thought about your content, you've laid it out properly, you've segmented and determined what the customer journey is going to be. You've identified what you think are your key conversion points and made sure that those are easy to do. So you launch your website and the clock is ticking, and there are key things that we need to understand. Just because we've launched the website doesn't mean that you get visitors on day one. On day one, traffic equals 0, or perhaps your relatives and friends that you've told about your website. So it's not a situation where, all of your potential clients are sitting there in the starting blocks like this gentleman who's getting ready to run his race. No, because there are several things that need to happen. Search engines like Google need to index the site. They need to crawl it so that they know what's on it. They call it crawling or spidering, but essentially it's just looking at your website, trying to understand what's on it. And there are certain things that you do in order to make that happen. And that's called search engine optimization. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Another thing that can bring people to your website is if you do paid advertising. We'll talk about that briefly as well. We'll talk about these things in more depth when we have the full day class, but these are the things that really are driving people to your website. Of course, you also could have social media, but that's actually considered a part of SEO. So I just want to ask, I see a question. How do you make an appointment? How do you add a make appointment widget to a website? That's not something I can tell you easily because it really depends on your platform. But when you download the widget will tell you to do it. If it's a WordPress site, you can go into the back end and you can search for widgets and you can make that widget live. Different platforms have different approaches, but that's the best I can tell you in general. So these are pieces of code that enable certain activities. So you would go and you would download, for example, I use Calendly. So Calendly has some code that I could apply to my website that would allow somebody to try to make an appointment, and it would be linked up with my calendar. So that's in a high level how that would work. I hope that helps. Great. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about search engine optimization. I didn't talk about this the last time I did this, but I think it's really important. Search engine optimization is this term that sometimes people react negatively to because it's just not clear what is going on with search engine optimization. There are a lot of activities that will help with what we call SEO, search engine optimization. So I'm going to give you just my general definition is that SEO, or search engine optimization, is a set of activities performed to make your site visible to search engines and to improve the chances that when someone searches for your services, your site will appear in the results. Now, I'm going to go forward just very quickly just to show you, and I'm hoping this is somewhat clear to you. This is a search engine result page, or a SERP, S-E-R-P, search engine result page. And what I did, the search engine I chose is Google. There are other search engines like Bing or Yahoo, I guess, is a search engine, lots of different search engines. But Google has the main share in the marketplace. And if you're covering Google, you've pretty much done what you need to do. But I put in professional digital marketing. So within, I hope you can see my pointer, but right below the word all, you'll see a line of gray text. In the time that after I searched for this and pressed enter in 0.68 seconds, it gave me 1.6 billion results. So what I'm trying to do when I do search engine optimization is increase the likelihood that my results are going to, first of all, be recognized by Google as being among that 1.6 billion. And ultimately, I want to increase the likelihood that I'm going to come up high enough in the search results to show up on the first page. When you are looking at a search result page, essentially there are 10 positions that are not paid positions. If you look at this page, the first 4 results are ads. They paid to be there. The rest of these results down here, or 10 of them, are going to be not ads. And then at the very bottom of the page, you'll see more ads. I'm not going to be able to scroll down because I just took a screenshot of the page. So what we're trying to do is to increase the likelihood that my content is going to show up in the results for whatever that person is searching for that is relevant to my business. So how do we do that? Well, there is something called technical SEO. I don't know whether you can hear that, but there we go. Technical SEO, which is the back end of your website. This is something where, all right, I'm sorry. Okay, so with technical SEO, what we're doing is we're looking at the back end of the website. And essentially, this is about how the content is organized and it's looking at the flags that Google looks for. So in other words, there are things in the back end of the website, in the coding and in the structure of the website that are indicators when Google is crawling the site that your site is what it is. Without those things, Google doesn't recognize things. So for example, I'm going to give you an example of a website that has a lot of pictures. One thing to be aware of is that Google doesn't recognize pictures. So you get around that by adding alternative text, and that alternative text is words, and it's located in a certain place, and therefore Google sees what it is. So there are things like that that will influence or impact your search engine optimization. There's also something called on-page SEO, and that is how the content on your page is relevant to the search. So in other words, if you sell shoes and somebody's searching for shoes, you need to have actual shoes on your website. If your website has hats and no shoes, then it's not going to appear in the shoes result. I hope I'm clear with that. So just your content, how relevant it is. The next thing is something called EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. Is the content well regarded? Is it coming from somebody with authority? Is it a trustworthy source? That can impact your SEO. How do we know that? Well, we know that actually by not the next bullet down, but what other websites link to your site, how often your site is referred to by others, how active is it being referenced, for example, on social media. All of those things kind of combine to this thing called expertise, authority, and trust. Also, we're looking at how fresh the content is. So let's say that you built a website 5 years ago and it really hasn't changed much since then. That would be considered a stale website. Even 3 years ago would be considered stale. The content hasn't changed and we know that time has passed. Google is looking for fresh content, good content. It's also looking for websites that people actually go to. So in a way, sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but as you get more traffic, you may get more traffic because you're getting traffic. So let me just look at it from the point of view of a search engine, whether it's Google or Bing or any other search engine. A search engine has clients, and those are the people that enter search terms, and they want to make the user happy. So it wants to provide accurate results and also the best results. So what does that mean? It means, well, if somebody's searching for something, if I'm Google, I want to give them the latest information. I want information that's really well organized. I want to show them websites that other people visit because that's kind of a stand-in for how good it is. I want websites that are being discussed by others on social media. And I want websites that are being kept current. So in other words, I'm not going to give them the 3-year-old website. I'll give them the 1-year-old website that's being kept up to date, that's being added to on a regular basis with content that doesn't duplicate any other content anywhere in the world. And the other thing that it means is that the content, it's driven by keywords. In other words, when I entered this term, professional digital marketing, consider that a keyword. It is a search term. So the keyword is driving that. The reason why these terms, these results are showing up is because somewhere in there is the term professional digital marketing. And it's in places where Google recognizes it and pulls it out. So keywords become very important. So I see a couple of questions. Oh, no more questions. If there are questions periodically, as I move from section to section, I'll look up and see what's happening in the chat. So I hope that what I've done is explain to you that SEO is important, that there are a lot of different activities related to SEO, but the whole idea is in order to enhance the likelihood that you're going to come up on the first page. Now, if somebody is actually doing pure SEO for you and they tell you, I can make sure that you show up on the first page, make sure that they're actually doing SEO and not pay-per-click advertising, because it is damn near impossible, quite frankly, for anybody to just say, I'm going to make sure that you get on the first page. SEO is a process and it takes time. You have to earn the stuff that I'm talking about. It is not something that you can, how would I put it? It's something that you work at. Again, it's earned. So it's not something you just go out and buy and tomorrow it will work. Generally speaking, you could be looking at 3 to 6 months to make significant moves. So, the chat. How often do websites, or how often should websites be refreshed with new or updated content? I would say, I mean, there's not a rule for this, but I would say that as often as it makes sense based on having new and fresh content. Sometimes, you know, that's only every 3 months. Sometimes it's more. Or I would say, let's put it this way. If you're going to blog, it's nice to blog once a month. Some people blog on a weekly basis. A blog is where you share more content within your website. And that, again, shares expertise and authority with people, because you can also take that blog and you can reference it from social media sites and tease it in. And in other words, you can put the first few words on a social media site and then have it linked back to your website. So it'll drive more traffic back to your website. So I'm not suggesting that you make small changes all the time, but the changes that you make and the updates should be content driven. It should even be staffing driven. So I've worked with people who have had, here's our team, and they've got 5 people up there and only 3 of them still work for the company. The other 2 left 5 years ago. I mean, that's a change, and that's a sign of life that you're actually making a change. So you want to bring good content on a regular basis. And, a month is a really reasonable period of time, because of blogging. But if you're just going to stretch it out and you're not really blogging, touch your website and make changes and adjustments and enhancements every couple of months, at least. So keywords, I talked about it. I said, professional digital marketing, it's not a word, it's a phrase, but it's more specifically like a search term that people would use to look for something. So it's a search term that is used to find your website. And it's a search term that is used by people who are looking for your services. So when you're thinking about keywords, you should always be thinking about this from the point of view of your customer or client. What terms do they use? And make sure you use those terms, because there are some places like in the medical field where, let's say that I treat a certain very specific type of headache and I'm a doctor. Do I want to get all into the whole, is it a migraine headache, a cluster headache? I mean, I might use those as keywords, but I want to make sure I have headache relief in there, because that's what people might be Googling. So you're trying to use the language that a lay or an uninitiated consumer would use. Now, again, if you are B2B and your terms are very specific, then that makes a lot of sense. But if you're not, let's keep jargon, technical jargon, out of the keyword, or don't rely solely on that. Let's just put it that way. In search engine optimization, which is where keywords live, as well as pay-per-click, some keywords are more difficult to rank for. So competition for the top 10 positions on search results is going to be stiff. And you'll know that when you start to do your keyword research. Let's see, I believe I heard that there was a way to search for most search terms to help you narrow down. Yeah, you can actually go into Google Trends. You just Google the word Google Trends, and you can input terms and see, what the trends are for those kinds of terms. And there are many tools, like I subscribe to a tool called SEMrush, and I can look at keyword volume. If I have ideas of what I would suggest for a keyword, I would put those keywords in, and I can see volume. You can also look on Google. There's a keyword tool within Google Analytics as well. So Google Analytics keyword term is keywords are free. You can access that for free. Just type in keyword tool, Google keyword tool, and you'll find it. Other tools bring in things like competitive assessment, which is why I use SEMrush. So I can look at other competitors and I can see who else is ranking for those keywords very easily. So that's what a professional SEO person would be able to do. But you can actually do that. The other thing I would do is, well, I think those are the main things. So I think, as I said, the more general your keywords are, sometimes they're more difficult to rank. So again, headache is going to be more difficult to rank for than cluster headache. Or, I'm trying to go for technical terms and I just don't know. I picked headache for some reason. So in other words, the more obscure your term is, the more easy it is to rank, but understand that some more obscure terms have lower search volume. But lower search volume means that it may be easier for you to rank because it's not as competitive. So keywords takes me right to paid search advertising. So we're using keywords in 2 ways. The first way that we're using keywords is to make sure that we have the terms incorporated into our website that people would be using to find our website. So you want those terms in there so that they'll show up. On the flip side, you use keywords sometimes to say, anytime somebody searches for this term, I would like you to show an ad for me. And that's what happens when you do something called pay-per-click advertising. So paid search advertising is advertising that is done on a search engine such as Google. Now, there are other search engines out there like Bing. You can do a search ad on Bing. Yahoo, same. You could consider even YouTube acting as a search engine. You could consider Amazon acting as a search engine. Why do I call it a search engine? Because there's a search window, you put in the term, it's going to return some results. So driven by that keyword, certain ads can be shown to you. And again, some are more competitive than others. That means that they cost more than others. You only pay per click. When I say pay-per-click, there are different categories, and I'm talking about pay-per-click here. There's also something called display, but we'll get into that when we have the class. So when you pay-per-click, you only pay when somebody clicks on the ad. So if they don't click on the ad, then you don't pay, which is good. Now your position in the ad results is driven by your bid, which is an automated process that you don't actually take part in it. You're basically putting a cap and you're saying, I don't want to pay more than X number of dollars per day, or X number of dollars per bid, or X number of dollars per month. And the algorithm will determine how to lay that money out. But the bottom line is, if you're not paying enough, you won't get into a premium position. So let's say that in order to have a reasonable showing of ads on Google for your particular company, you need to have a budget of $750 a month that you're just paying to Google. If you decide, well, I don't really have 750 bucks a month, but I do have 200, I would say that you probably don't need to be advertising on Google, because what's going to happen is if you win, you're not going to win and show up high enough for anybody to see you. So you've got to pay enough in order to be seen. So there's kind of a balance. You want to manage your budget, but you don't want to be to the point where you're willing to pay and then you can't even get it shown, or it gets shown in an unfortunate site. Like an unfortunate spot to be shown would be on the second page at the bottom. Remember I showed you those 1.6 billion results for that one term, and the first 4 were ads. And I told you that at the bottom of the page of 10 organic postings, there were 4 more. Well, there's another page and another page and another page. You don't really want to be back there. So that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're a little higher up by bidding properly. So once again, I'm showing this again. These are the ads, in case you don't notice. It used to be a little bit more noticeable, but then they decided to get monochromatic on us. So it just says ad in bold. And it's amazing. Many people will say they don't click on the ads, but if people didn't click on the ads, Google would not be able to sell advertising. So what's very interesting about ads is that sometimes you could have an ad, but if your organic result, and an organic result is something like this, how to become a professional digital marketer, they didn't pay for that. They didn't pay an ad. That's not an ad. That's an organic. The algorithm has put it there as a #1 result. Sometimes it's actually the fact that there is an ad. Let's say there was an ad for that website. There's a higher likelihood that somebody would move down the page and click on the organic result. So not all the time do they click on the ad, but the ad gives them brand recognition, and then when they see it again, they'll click. Or there's this feeling like, well, I won't click on the ad, but I'll go to the website. That way they won't be able to tell that I was there. Not true, but sometimes people try to overthink it. So I think, all this was around websites. This was around, okay, you got a website. What do you need to think about when you put one together? And then how do you get found? 2 big ways of getting found are search engine optimization. We talked about paid search advertising. And we talked specifically about pay per click within paid search. Just to sum up, you need to consider, if you're going to do a website and you're either going to update it or start from scratch, are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to outsource it? And that's really a time, skill, and frustration measure for yourself. You need to decide what is the value of your time. You need to think about what kind of activity you want to be done on that site, whether it's going to be like online sales or doing some kind of e-learning, or is it a membership site, or are you just trying to collect leads? You may want to think about, well, do I need to make changes on this frequently, and how will I be able to do that? And then you want to make sure that whatever you end up with is professional and really reflecting the appropriate image for your business. It would be a disappointment to do something and then really see that it just doesn't compare to what your competitors are doing. It looks a little shoddier, or it's a little less sophisticated or something. So think about all of those things when you're considering all of your different options when it comes to websites. So just another one, remember there are these multiple components that sometimes people will forget about, and I don't want you to forget about this. You've got a web address, which you don't permanently own, but it's something that you have a right to use. So you have to renew it every few years. You might have to do it on an annual basis, but do not make the mistake of getting the perfect web address for yourself, like www.beautifulshoes.com, and then ignoring it when they say that you need to, you know, pay again to make sure that you have it, because you will lose it. And that would be a disappointment. You have the actual content that sits on your page, which is something that you can develop or somebody else can develop. You have hosting, which is physically where your website sits. And then you have a component that is called maintenance. So if there's anything that needs to be updated, sometimes you might be on Joomla and they come out with a new version, you need to upgrade to the next version in order to make sure that your website is, you know, safe and secure. Or let's say you need to change the kind of security certificate you have, or maybe there's a concern around other security or hacking. That's what maintenance can help you deal with. So those are the components that you need to think about when you're considering your website. And to segue into social media, as I said before, you want to make sure that there's a linkage between the two. So on your website, you should link to your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, your Instagram, your TikTok, whatever. And that moves me into social media, which I'll move through pretty quickly here. There are so many platforms. How do you decide which one to use? That is one of the most common questions that we get asked. But then I think we all know the ones that are very popular, and we think, you know, I think we know the ones that are growing quickly. We probably have an intuitive understanding of which ones are appropriate for the audience that we're going for. And that's all going to be part of the mix in making your decision. So it's going to be driven by your business strategy. Who are your customers? What are the demographics? Where do they hang out? What kind of messages do you have to deliver? Are they things that are better on video, or are they things that are better just in still images? Is there text involved? All of that. That's something that you need to figure out. You want to make sure that you have defined objectives for your social media. You want to understand what your clients are actually doing on social media. Oftentimes, social media is not there because they're looking for your service. They're there because they are hanging out with family and friends. They're pursuing their own personal interests. So what you put on social media has to apply to them in some way, has to attract them and be interesting and not offensive. So one thing that is a guideline is when you're talking about social media, you should be sharing information more so than you're promoting your business. So we all know what an ad looks like, and we all know what it looks like when we are just purely promoting our business. But in terms of sharing, if you are an accountant, sharing would be, you know, keeping people up to date on deadlines for certain filings, or giving them a list of things that can commonly be deducted for personal household, or giving people information about potential upcoming changes in rules that might benefit them. That's what sharing is. So sharing is educating, and sharing is a bit of branding, because your approach to how you do that is also branding. And you want it to be consistent with your other marketing activities. So if you're doing, for example, email campaigns, you might want to align your email campaigns, which also, by the way, should have a lot of sharing involved rather than just overt selling. You want to align that with what you're doing in your social media. The other thing that you need to make sure that you understand is that you don't own the social media platform. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it is possible. I'm not going to tell you that you can't do it. It is possible to never have a website. You could just have a Facebook business page and run all your business through your Facebook business page. Regardless as to, how difficult it is to navigate that page or to find information about your company, where's the About Us section? How do I understand how long they've been in business? All of that kind of thing is not necessarily as easily navigable on a platform such as Facebook. But the other reason why it's not easy is because Facebook has been known and is doing it all the time, changing its format, changing and disabling certain capabilities, adding others. So it is a platform that is changing all the time. And as somebody who works a lot with social media marketing and works with other people who do social media marketing, meetings that we have together, there are lots of bad words thrown around because changes are being made all the time. And it's like, where'd the thing go that I was just doing? So I think you just need to understand that you didn't pay for it. And so therefore it's not a static product. It's a product that is always undergoing change. From their point of view, they're enhancing it for the user. The user not being you as the business person, the user being just the plain visitor. So that's the difference. So you just need to understand and be flexible, because they're adding features and the features are great. Sometimes the features aren't great. Sometimes they are. So I'm pulling Facebook out, but this will go for any other platform that you're talking about. You need to be prepared for changes if you go that route. So what is social media marketing there in the first place? Why would we even do this? It's really, we're trying to do some relationship building. We're trying to brand ourselves a bit. We can engage in marketing and sales, of course. We can manage our image. We can do reputation management. We can try to get reviews, customer reviews. We can do customer service. We can do talent hunting and attracting new employees. We can do a bit of market research. We can build communities. And we can actually bring people to our websites from our social media interactions. So lots of different ways to use social media. So think about it strategically. So what are the requirements? Understanding who your customers are, understanding what messages you want to communicate, understanding what your branding is and how you want to execute that. You probably want to start out with a plan, a content plan, lay out the year in 12 buckets each month. Know what you want to talk about in each month. And there are tools that can help you do it. You can use, people use different things. There's something called Planoly. There's something called Hootsuite. Some of these tools allow you to create a post and put them in multiple social media platforms. You could post simultaneously on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Just understand that the native platform for an Instagram is very different from what LinkedIn looks like. So a LinkedIn post on Instagram will look kind of funny. So, but it can save you time. You want to start to be able to use metrics on these social media sites, and you want to understand and make sure that your activities, again, are consistent with your other marketing activities. So in terms of this, think about, for all of these, who your target audience is, how frequently you want to post, what the complexity of your message is, and then how members use these sites. So one thing I want to make sure that we understand, frequency of posting. You will find articles that will tell you how many times a week you need to post on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, etc. I tend to ignore all of that because I think that we as business people need to decide what we can do and what we can do consistently and do that. So in other words, if you're only able to do, if LinkedIn is important to you and you're only able to do one good LinkedIn post a week, do that. It is better than 0 posts a week. It's better than one post every 6 months. And looking back on this 6 months from now, you'll have, 6 months worth of weekly posts. And that is something that people can use to learn about you. On the flip side, if you can do it 3 or 4 times a week, then have at it. But many businesses don't have the resources to do that until they're willing to outsource that, because it takes time. You need to think about this. So I think I would not be all caught up in how many times you're supposed to do a post on any given social media platform. That's just my point of view, but I know others echo it as well. And in some instances, depending on what platforms you're on, you want to do it when you have time to stick around, because part of social media is engagement. So if you post something out there and then you don't come back for another week, then you might miss if somebody comments or somebody has a question. You want to be available to look at that and respond to it. So that also goes into how much can you actually handle, or do you want to outsource it? Quickly, we'll talk about Facebook. We all know about Facebook in the sense that it's the world's largest social media network. It's founded by Mark Zuckerberg, and Facebook is linked to Instagram, WhatsApp, and this device called Oculus, which I think was a 3D tool. And you understand that if you look at these numbers, I'm not going to read everything here, you'll understand why people are interested in being on Facebook as a business, because that's where your customers are. And they're on there intensively, once a day, several times a day, a high percentage of adults in the US. If you look at demographics, and I have even more than this, you'll find that, the income level of Facebook users is quite high. And the demographics, very interestingly, 82% of college grads are on Facebook. So that tells you a little bit about income. If you look at the percentage on Facebook by age, you'll see that overall, between the ages of 18 and 49, 79% of Americans, adults, are on Facebook. It drops off a bit as you get above 50, but still think of these numbers as only increasing right here, because now a lot of people are home that weren't home before. And this is a primary mode of communication now for some people. Facebook Live, Facebook Messenger, all of that is there, and that's increasing people's facility with it. So I think you're going to see that even after the pandemic, these numbers are going to probably increase a bit. So when we, no, Facebook. So we want to talk about reach, and this will go across a lot of the different platforms. There's organic reach and there's paid reach. Organic reach is when you're not paying and your post is exposed to an audience. It's a natural exposure and it's driven by the algorithm, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. Paid is when you're advertising, and you can advertise on these platforms. That is how they make money. They make money from advertising. So that is why Facebook members don't pay right now, because they are vulnerable to advertising. And Facebook and other social media tools have a powerful ability to target beyond even Google. So the algorithm that I talked about, an algorithm, I love this term. It's basically a term that describes how Facebook decides who will see what you post. An algorithm is a set of rules. The algorithm that Facebook has is proprietary. They have not shared what are all the factors that determine what shows up in your Facebook feed. But we have a good sense of what these things are. Understand that the algorithm is basically learning from what you do on the platform, the things that you click on. And the objective really is to give visitors an optimal experience that meets their interests. So this is why you might post something and somebody that you know that you're friends with on Facebook they don't see it. Why? Because whatever you posted is not the kind of stuff they normally look at. Or they don't look at you that often, and so it's so far down in their feed that they stop looking at it before they get it. There are a lot of different ways to be seen on Facebook. There's your personal life, which is a personal profile. There's a Facebook business page. There are Facebook groups. There's the ability to go live on Facebook and broadcast. There's an area called stories. People have watch parties where they're looking at lives potentially together, or looking at recorded lives, or looking at other recorded stuff. And then of course there's Facebook Messenger. There's probably other Facebook stuff, because all of this stuff keeps growing every day, and some of them are more or less relevant depending on how you market your business. So one thing I think you just need to understand is that organic reach, the part where you didn't pay to be seen, that has been dropping. The competition for Facebook members' attention is increasing. So in order to reach the people you want, you're probably going to have to do some level of paid promotion. And just don't forget that they make money by selling ads. So if you have a business page and you're posting, you can expect that, you know, perhaps less than 5% of your fans are going to see that post. And that's just the way it is. It's not a situation where Facebook is putting that post into all of the people that have connected with you. So this is why having a business page on Facebook becomes important. So remember I told you there was a personal profile and then there's a business page. If you look at the two, they have different formats. The business page is where Facebook wants you to promote your business. There are some people that are using their personal profile and promoting their business through their personal profile. Strictly speaking, not the way Facebook wants you to promote your business. They could come after you for that. It's not that you can't put anything related to your business into your personal profile, but the primary place for you to promote your business is on a business page. But the reality is that this is the only place that allows you to do all the things that Facebook can do for you. It allows you to take advantage of all the things that Facebook can do for you. So it allows you to advertise. So that overcomes that organic reach issue. The fact that you're putting your posts out there and nobody is seeing them. Well, how come that is? And how can I overcome that? Well, you can advertise. You can actually advertise in a number of ways on Facebook. You can have a campaign, but you can also take a few of your posts and boost them. Now that is something that you do strategically. If you really need to advertise, you should have a campaign, but you can overcome the organic reach issue by putting a few dollars behind a post and extending your reach and saying, you know, I want to reach all of the people who are thinking about divorce, or all of the, let's say I want to reach single women between the age of 25 and 55 who live in Passaic County and Essex County. You can actually do that within Facebook. So that's allowing you to overcome the organic reach issue. It also allows you to see true metrics. So it will show you how many people are seeing your posts, how many people like your posts. And when you advertise, it'll show you all of the people, or it will show you who's reacted. It will show you how many people have clicked on your ad. It allows you, of course, you can do this, I think, outside of a business page, but creating and managing events, but pulled into your page gives you a lot of power. And it allows you, if you are a small business, to have multiple administrators. You can give different roles to them, or you can actually delegate and say, I want somebody else to manage it, but it's tied to you. So as I said, you can boost an existing post. So if you share an article and you say, if you want to know more about this, give me a call, I'm an expert. That's kind of an ad, right? You could boost that post beyond your normal organic audience. Or you could create an ad similar to what you would do with Google Ads, where you have an ad, you click on it, it takes you to a landing page, and the landing page has an offer on it. You could also do Facebook Lives, Again, that gives you, real-time visibility, and you could use stories, which, are the things that disappear after 24 hours, but they give you some immediacy. So many different ways to reach your customers that way. So with ads, the neat thing about this too is that you can do an ad where you're just collecting leads and the target does never have to leave Facebook. Or you could, as I said before, take them to a landing page or your website. So lots of different ways to manage this within Facebook. So this is an example of an ad, and it's interesting because this ad is one that I clicked on. It actually happened to show up, I forgot when, but in any event, I rarely click on ads in Facebook, but it knew, by the way, based on my other activities that I was interested in, using my iPhone to take video and stuff like that. And so it's showing me something that's relevant to me. It showed up in my feed. And, so I just thought, well, gee, that's the targeting. It's showing up. It's not offensive. I'm interested. So there you go. And many times people don't even realize they're looking at ads because it's attuned to what the person has been looking at, to the point where the content is almost seamless compared to some other things that they've been looking at. So Instagram is very much linked in with Facebook. Same owner, the same capabilities. It's a photo and video sharing platform. You know that it's very mobile oriented. In fact, phone was the primary interface. Now they've actually improved your ability to do Instagram posts and manage your Instagram on a computer. But before, you had to do all kinds of acrobatics in order to make that happen. The thing about Instagram is that it's a highly curated, it can be a highly curated place. What I mean by that is, think about the art collection in the Met. They put, a romantic art over here. They put neoclassical architecture over there. And if you go to the neoclassical place, you see neoclassical stuff. Well, Instagram is that way. So you'll notice that when you look at some people's feeds, particularly certain brands, they have brand colors. I mean, they have really executed branding, even down to the color of the background on a text post. So why Instagram? Instagram's growing rapidly. It does not have the same reach right now as Facebook, but it does tend to trend younger than Facebook. And that growth is, exploding on the younger side. So if you're talking about ads, people are advertising on Instagram. 25% of the total Facebook ad revenue is being put into Instagram. And 80% of people on Instagram are following business accounts. So you can have a personal account on Instagram and you can have a business account. This is an example of a business account. So this is Coach, and you'll notice that it has a look and feel that is very much branded by Coach. It's very much identifiable as Coach. So you can see that it's a very visible or visual platform, very different from Facebook or LinkedIn. There is text, of course, and you know that. Now, they also have the ability to do live. They have the ability to do video. And for longer videos, they have something called IGTV. So oftentimes I'll see a video and you'll start the video on regular Instagram, but then you have to click through in order to see the rest of it because longer videos, really need to be in that IGTV. And this is an example of their video. This is when you go to the home page and you're just looking at the feed. So that also has stories, that content that disappears very quickly. And again, all the advertising that you can do on Facebook, you can do it on Instagram. In fact, if you're advertising on Facebook, you can select settings that would allow your ads to also be shown on Instagram. Very quickly, LinkedIn. I think everybody understands what LinkedIn as a business person, professional network. And this is, remember what I said, this doesn't look like LinkedIn. I mean, this just has a very different look and feel. But the same content curation on LinkedIn is possible. It's more about content. It's not about, you know, the photographs. So if your expertise is accounting and you're going to share about accounting, you're going to share about milestones in your career. You're going to try to connect with other people, and you're going to try to make sure that people who might be your potential clients know that you're an expert, and LinkedIn is a place for that. And you can advertise on LinkedIn. You can also publish on LinkedIn. So I'm not going to read this in depth, but what I will tell you is that fewer users in Facebook. The users that are on LinkedIn in general are using it less intensively. Rarely are people on it. Well, I'm going to say prior to the pandemic, you would say people are on it, you know, several times a month. It wasn't a daily thing. You're going to see more intense use of LinkedIn now. A couple of things. People are working from home. Secondly, people have become unemployed and they're on a job search. So LinkedIn is going to become more of a thing. At the time that this survey was done, the average user spent 17 minutes a month on LinkedIn. That I would believe is obsolete. I just have not seen any new figures. So this is what a LinkedIn profile looks like. You have an opportunity to position yourself in your business. That's very important. And then you can also do something called social selling on LinkedIn. So here's a sales navigator page, which allows you, if you do this and you're prospecting, you have the ability to identify targets and potentially connect with them. And there's a whole process and a whole industry around doing this type of thing. You also have the ability to create a company page. Now, I don't want to end without talking about YouTube, because video is really going to be king. YouTube itself has 2 billion monthly users, and people spend a lot of time on YouTube. It's going to be algorithm driven, what people watch and or what they're shown, because remember, YouTube and Google are linked together. So what you do on Google contaminates, if you want to call it that, YouTube. So if you were never on YouTube, but Google knows what you search for and you're using the same laptop, you can believe that some of the videos that you are offered up on a, you know, recommended list are going to be related to what you searched for. So video, again, we can't say enough about how important that is, whether it's videos that you do for yourself or video content that you provide. It is driving a lot of traffic, a lot of eyes. People who have video on their websites, visits are longer than when video is not on a website. Video posts on Facebook organically are shown to more people than a non-video post. So even Facebook likes video. So I think I'm just going to speed through this and just say that there are many other platforms that are out there, but again, the principles still align, which is understand who your audience is and where they are before you decide where you're going to camp on these social media sites. So you need to have a content strategy. We talked about social media management tools like a Hootsuite. And you want to make sure that all your social media profiles, wherever they are, link back to your website. So again, you want to close that loop. You will link out to your social media sites from your website and then link back from your social media sites. So you want to pick one or two platforms. If you're not comfortable with this stuff, pick one and learn it. Be consistent in your posting schedule. Do what makes sense for you. Determine if you want to make any or use any new tools. And I think that you'll have it made if you just basically do those three things. And again, it's all assuming that you know who your customer is, what you're going to message, and you want to make sure that you're tracking your performance and learning from it. So bottom line is we want to be where people are. That's why we have social media. You want to leverage the capabilities of the platform. We also want to make sure that when we are thinking about all of this, whether it's your website or your social media, that there is a short attention span. Make sure that mobile compatibility is something that you're thinking about on your website. and make sure that your social media activities are not different, or your messaging is not different from what's on your website, what's in your email, or any other marketing activity that you do. With that, I think I'm at the end, and I want to see if there are questions. I see one in the chat. We are getting a recording. We're getting a copy of the slides. Not sure that the recording is going out. Can I show the last slide again? Which last slide? The key takeaway slide? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, everyone.
Uh-oh,
Oh, there's a.
that was good. Are there any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Or put them in the chat.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Sure.
The workshop that's on the 20th, is that going to go more into analytics?
Yeah, analytics is the last hour or so of the website. I mean, I'm sorry, of the workshop.
Mhm.
Last hour and a half. I actually have not seen his presentation, but yes, definitely.
So basically it's this year, just going more in depth.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about the different platforms that there are within websites. What are the differences between, you know, for example, a WordPress or a Joomla or Wix. We'll talk about more about social media. We'll talk more about online advertising in general and how we can make that work for us.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, this is Doreen. Does the SBC provide help with building a website or just the class?
Well, when you say help with, we don't build websites.
Mm-hmm.
You can work with somebody who builds websites. We can give you advice on how to structure your website. We can give you advice on, you know, considerations, but we don't actually deliver finished product.
Okay. Another thing is you said that the class will be free or no?
The class?
Mm-hmm.
The class that is coming up on the 20th, I believe Priscilla said was going to be 50% off, so that would make it $50.
Okay, thank you.
Also, I would like to add to Cecilia some of them. So this class is coming up May 20th, and it is part of a 3-part series. So there's still 2 other classes. You know, if some of you on here need something a little bit more in depth or advanced, I mean, so I think part 2, or I will call that part 1, deals with engaging the online customer, and that deals with how do you niche down and find, you know, the right customer that you should be targeting. And then the one that's called designing the perfect digital campaign actually takes from a lot of what this upcoming workshop with Cecilia is going to be talking about. Once you've figured out which, you know, what your website is going to have on it, or, you know, the changes, what it's saying, what social media platforms you're going to be utilizing, because naturally you can have a presence on all, but you're going to have maybe 2 or 3 that will be your main channels that you'll be mostly active on. So it's choosing, once you've chosen those, once you know what your metrics are in terms of Google Analytics, so you know what to search for, what to look for, and you know how to make changes in regards to what your analytics is saying, then you'll actually put together an actual digital campaign. So that last workshop also deals with that. But you do need the foundations, which is what we're covering on the all-day workshop.
One of the questions that I was asked was how long was the class, and I think it's still scheduled on the website as 9 to 4, but I know that Priscilla, you and I discussed different timing.
Yeah, so
Because it's going to be virtual.
yeah, it's maybe 9 to 2. It actually now depends on the participation of those on it, because we actually had a workshop in a different topic that actually took 9, like it was 9 to 3 the whole day. Right now we have a business plan workshop that's actually taking the 9 to 2. We have breaks in between, of course, so you can grab something to eat while while you're there. It's virtually, so you can just mute your tabs and stuff, but we have regular breaks. So I hope anyone's not really alarmed by the time, but we're trying to reduce it so that we're not on there from 9 to 4. Obviously, that's all day. So we're expecting it to be about 9 to 2 instead of 9 to 4.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, we adults, we need our breaks. So, oh, I see that you're,
Yeah, I put a poll up for those that are on today. If you can just, answer some of those questions, those will be good. I saw someone ask a question about the recording of today's webinar. Yes. So there's a slight delay, so it's not sent out immediately, but no later than Saturday. I'm hoping by tomorrow, everyone will receive a link to a replay of today's presentation, along with a PDF of the slides.
other questions? If we register for the website, the workshop, but can't make it, will we be able to access a video later? I'm going to ask Priscilla.
Yes, you will be able to access it. This workshop happens 3 times a year, so we already missed the one in January. Was it February? So this one is here is May. So you can also opt to attend the next cycle. So you can just email us and let us know how you would like to do that. If you would rather if you're registered and you miss it, I think the next one would be September 23rd. So if you couldn't make it, you can definitely attend the one on the 23rd. But if you wanted to substitute a replay of the workshop, especially now since it is virtual, definitely we can facilitate that for you.
So has everybody responded to the poll?
I mean, we can stay around for next just a little few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free while we're here. And I know there was a user too that asked about building websites. I really think you should come to this full day workshop. I think what normally happens is when you come to the workshop, a lot of the questions that you may have will get answered. Like Cecilia said, we'll talk about platforms, because there's a lot of different platforms that are out there, some easier than some depending on what your budget is may work better for you. And sometimes your platform actually really it helps you when you're ready to do SEO. Some platforms are easier than some. So I think that will also be discussed. But what comes with the workshop is the post-training counseling. So everyone that attends the workshop, no matter where you are based, because I began the workshop earlier by saying that one-on-one counseling is done by county. The only time that we trump that rule is if you attended one of our workshops and you wanted counseling on that topic, you do get to get that one-on-one counseling with us. And so for those that are interested in building a website, I think what's very beneficial for you is after attending the workshop, you can sit with a counselor, and as Cecilia said, we can help you map out what the content or what will be on your website, because that also dictates what a web designer may charge you, when trying to put together a website. I think a lot of people are giving that responsibility to a web designer. You're just putting an about page or pulling some information out of Word document and giving it to a designer, and just having them design the page how they see fit, and not much thought or strategy goes into how that website should be built, how the pages should flow, where the content should be positioned. I saw someone earlier asked about, widgets, and I'll probably address that, what widgets should be used. There's not a lot of strategy that goes into that. And it's really good for you to be armed with that before you even start speaking with a developer. And I definitely, as a web designer myself, that dictates pricing, because there's so many tools out there that you can start building a website even on your own. But the real work begins when the strategy that goes into the content, putting that together. And the SBDC can help you with that, help you structure that, and at no cost. The counseling is at no cost. And then you can take that and go to a developer.
I can definitely tell you that if you have your content, you have, well developed and well envisioned, you have saved yourself some time, if not some money. And, oftentimes, again, depending, people have varying interests in writing things down and in planning things out. But this is one area where sitting down and planning in advance will save you time, probably money, and also a little bit of heartache longer term. I think the whole thing, that Priscilla was saying too about the platforms, there are differences in platforms very much driven by what you're trying to accomplish. And, I almost look at it as a pay now or pay later, because at some point you're going to pay for something. You can save money in the short term, or you can invest money now and not have to trip yourself up later. But, those are choices that we all have to make. So we're trying to be agnostic, but there are implications to the choices that we make when it comes to website platforms.
Now, I see another question here. I think Holly asked this earlier on in their presentation, and she said, how do you add and make appointment widget to a website? Now, I'll let Cecilia do that, but there are some tools. But Cecilia, I guess you can answer that.
Yeah, I talked about that when the question came up. I mean,
okay,
widgets are, you go to a widget store essentially and download code that goes into your website. And I'm familiar with the WordPress environment and how that works, but they work as plugins to your website. And when you're in the process of doing your website, you'll be able to see where they will fit. I would say that you want to make sure that you're, using something that works for you and not something that's just easy to do. So you want to basically be a good consumer of that and understand the strengths and weaknesses of each one. Now, our website session that we're doing is not a hands-on, let's build a website session, but we can talk about the issues and the pros and cons. So for me to tell you how to install a widget, I'd have to know what's your platform, and then we'd have to, depending on the platform, I would talk to somebody who's a deep developer as opposed to just me.
Also, there are apps as well that you can integrate with your website. For instance, at the SBDC, we use Calendly. That's CALENDLY.com. And, that is very beneficial for us, especially, You know, sometimes we don't have the time to schedule back and forth with someone, you know, what days work. So we import our schedule into it and we say when we're available, and we integrate that with Zoom. You know, we're virtual now. So we're not doing the in-person one. So we're using Zoom meeting or Google Meets, or there's some other applications out there. But so by having Calendly integrated into your website, if your call to action is schedule an appointment, it's a good app that you have it hooked up to your Google Calendar or your iPhone calendar, and people can schedule their time based on the availability that you put in. And if you are doing a video conference, if that's your mode of operating now, it can, you know, Zoom can schedule the access codes, the meeting code, all that gets automated and sent out to your clients. And you know, you look up and you'll see the appointment in your calendar and a notification. You can ask questions if you need to collect some information so that you're prepared for that appointment ahead of time. So they answer those questions while they're booking that appointment. So there are also third-party apps that you can integrate with your website to get that accomplished.
Actually, I think of widgets as apps in a sense, because I mentioned Calendly, and you can download Calendly as a widget onto your website. And there's a tool called Zapier, which allows you to integrate a lot of your different digital tools. So you could integrate your appointment setting into your CRM, for example, and there's code that you put onto the back end of your website to make sure that if somebody is submitting their name, address, and phone number, that it gets also uploaded at the same time into your CRM, and they get, for example, an automated letter saying, oh, thank you for downloading my such and such and such, you know, would you like to join my mailing list, etc. So all of those things are very possible. I see a question about how you set up an Instagram account for direct shopping by clicking on photos. So that is a very detailed question. And we are, you know, I'm going to tell you that we're not going to get to that level of detail on that. However, if you go on Instagram, go into, of course, change your account to a business account. And then there is a shopping button or something. It's within the settings. So you have to set that up within the settings. It's basically, you know, I can't describe it here, but you've got to go into your basic business account settings, explore them all, manipulate them all, and then you'll find that shopping, and you'll be able to integrate with, some people integrate this with Shopify, or you don't have to do that at all. Okay.
All right, so I think we're a little bit past our
Yes, we are.
today. So again, we would like to thank you so much for, you know, taking the time out to attend the webinars. As I said earlier, you know, our current environment has changed. So the SBDC is working on some very new and more interactive webinars. So there are reasons for that poll. Hopefully coming up in the next few months, as we realize businesses are trying to shift the way they interact or the way they acquire customers. So are we doing. We're doing that as well, and trying to provide you with resources and webinars and workshops to help you to accomplish that. So I won't be surprised if some of the questions that you are asking here today, a webinar or workshop comes of that. So please stay plugged in with us and stay on the lookout for new content, new workshops that will be coming out in the next few months. For those who are on here, if this workshop today was beneficial to you, I urge you to sign up for the full day workshop, where we dive in deeper. And as I said earlier, a copy of today's presentation will be emailed to everyone, along with the link of the replay of today's webinar. And so if there's no other questions, I would like to thank you for tuning in today, and hopefully we see you on the next webinar. Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank